In the heart of New York City, high above the bustling streets and bright lights, there was a man who had everything: money, power, fame, but none of it mattered anymore. This billionaire, once known for his sharp mind and relentless drive, now spent most of his days staring out of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his luxurious penthouse. His name wasn't important. What mattered was that he was broken, both physically and emotionally. For years, he'd built an empire from scratch. He started with nothing but a dream and turned it into one of the largest tech companies in the Fahavama world. People admired him, envied him, even feared him. But all of that changed when his body betrayed him. A rare autoimmune disease crept into his life, attacking his system bit by bit. No matter how much money he threw at doctors or how many experimental treatments he tried, nothing worked. Slowly, he went from being unstoppable to barely able to get out of bed. One evening, after months of hiding away, he decided to attend a charity gala. It was more out of obligation than desire. He didn't want people thinking he'd given up completely. The event was filled with the city's elite: politicians, celebrities, business tycoons, and their glamorous partners. Everyone looked perfect, smiling and laughing as if they didn't have a care in the world. But beneath the surface, whispers about the billionaire spread like wildfire. They talked about how thin he looked, how pale his skin was, and how frail he seemed compared to the towering figure he used to be. At some point during the night, someone approached him with fake sympathy. "How are you holding up?" they asked, though their tone suggested they already knew the answer. That's when something inside him snapped. Tired of pity and empty words, he stood up abruptly, silencing the room with his presence. With a voice that carried both frustration and desperation, he said, "Listen up. If anyone here can cure me, I'll give them $1 million. The room fell silent for a moment before erupting into laughter. Some chuckled nervously, while others outright guffawed. To them, it was just another eccentric remark from a man who was famous for making bold statements. No one took him seriously, not until a young boy sitting quietly in the corner stood up and walked toward him. This boy was different from the rest of the crowd. Dressed in simple clothes, he looked out of place among the tailored suits and designer dresses. Yet, there was something about him, an air of quiet confidence, that made people notice him. As he stepped closer to the billionaire, the murmurs in the room faded away. When he reached the front, he looked the man straight in the eye and said, "Prepare the check." The billionaire blinked, taken aback. Was this kid serious? Before he could respond, the boy continued, "I'm not joking. I think I can help you." Now the billionaire was intrigued. Who was this boy, and why did he believe he could succeed where countless experts had failed? Curiosity got the better of him, and he invited the boy to visit his private lab the next day. There, surrounded by state-of-the-art equipment and teams of highly skilled scientists, the billionaire wanted to see if the boy's claim held any weight. When the boy arrived, he carried only a small laptop and a USB drive. He introduced himself simply as Ethan, explaining that he'd been working on a revolutionary idea involving nanotechnology. According to him, tiny programmable particles could target and repair damaged cells in the body. Most people would have dismissed such a concept as science fiction, but the billionaire was desperate enough to listen. As Ethan began explaining his theory, the scientists in the room exchanged skeptical glances. They whispered among themselves, questioning whether this teenager truly understood the complexity of the problem. But Ethan remained unfazed, diving deeper into his research and showing simulations that demonstrated how his nanoparticles could work. What no one realized at the time was that Ethan wasn't motivated by money or fame. He had a deeply personal reason for pursuing this cure. Back home, his younger sister battled a similar condition, though hers was less severe. Watching her struggle every day had driven him to dedicate his life to finding a solution. Now, standing in the billionaire's lab, he saw an opportunity not just to save one person, but to change countless lives, including his sister's. Despite the skepticism surrounding him, Ethan poured his heart and soul into the project. Day after day, he worked tirelessly, often staying late into the night while the other researchers shook their heads in disbelief. They couldn't understand how someone so young could remain so determined in the face of overwhelming odds. But Ethan knew something they didn't. Sometimes the answers lie not in experience, but in fresh perspectives and unwavering belief. Little did anyone know. This unlikely partnership between a dying billionaire and a teenage genius was about to rewrite the rules of medicine and perhaps even restore faith in humanity itself. The next morning, the billionaire woke up feeling a mix of curiosity and frustration. He replayed the events of the previous night in his mind, the laughter from the crowd, the bold promise he'd made, and then the boy's unexpected confidence. Was this kid serious? Or was he just another dreamer who didn't understand the gravity of the situation? Still, there was something about the boy's eyes, calm, determined, that made the billionaire want to give him a chance. When the boy arrived at the lab later that day, he brought nothing fancy with him. No expensive gadgets or flashy presentations, just a small laptop and a USB drive. The billionaire introduced him to the team of scientists already working on finding a cure for his condition. These were some of the brightest minds in the field, people who had spent years studying diseases like his. At first glance, they seemed unimpressed by the teenagers standing before them. One scientist even raised an eyebrow when the boy started explaining his idea. "I've been working on nanotechnology," the boy began, his voice steady despite the skeptical looks around him. "These are tiny particles, smaller than anything you can see with your naked eye. They can be programmed to target specific cells in the body, like the ones causing your illness, and repair them, without harming the healthy parts." The room fell silent for a moment. Then came the questions, sharp and probing. "How do you plan to control these particles?" One scientist asked. "What happens if they malfunction inside the body?" Another chimed in. The boy answered each question patiently, pulling up diagrams and simulations on his laptop to explain his theory. But skepticism lingered in the air. Some of the researchers exchanged glances, their expressions saying what they didn't dare say aloud. Asterisk, "This is impossible." Asterisk, despite their doubts, the billionaire decided to let the boy try. After all, what did he have to lose? His condition was only getting worse, and the treatments he'd tried so far hadn't worked. If this kid had even a sliver of a chance to succeed, it was worth exploring. So he gave the boy access to the podcast as the lab's resources and told him to get to work. Over the next few weeks, the boy became a regular presence in the lab. He arrived early every morning and stayed late into the night, tinkering with equipment and running tests. The older scientists watched him from a distance, shaking their heads sometimes. "He's wasting his time," one of them muttered under his breath. Another joked, "Maybe we should ask him to fix the coffee machine while he's at it." Their comments weren't meant to be cruel, but they reflected the disbelief that hung over the entire project. But the boy didn't care. He wasn't there to impress anyone. He was there because he believed in what he was doing. Every setback, every failed experiment only fueled his determination. Late at night, when the lab was quiet and everyone else had gone home, he would sit alone at his workstation, staring at data on his screen and thinking through every possible solution. Sometimes he called his younger sister, who lived hours away. She was the reason he was doing this, not just for the billionaire, but for her too. Her condition wasn't as severe as the billionaire's, but she struggled daily with fatigue and pain. Hearing her voice reminded him why he couldn't give up. As days turned into weeks, the boy started making progress. He discovered ways to stabilize the nanoparticles, ensuring they wouldn't break down too quickly once inside the body. He figured out how to program them to identify the exact type of cells causing the disease. Each small victory brought him closer to his goal. Though he knew there was still a long way to go, one afternoon, while reviewing the latest batch of test results, the boy noticed something unusual. The nanoparticles had successfully targeted and neutralized the T, and autoparticles had successfully targeted and neutralized the successfully targeted and neutralized the T. He neutralized the two Hansen nanoparticles, harmful cells, in a sample provided by the Billionaire's doctors. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was a breakthrough, a sign that his theory might actually work. Excited, he rushed to show the results to the Billionaire, who happened to be visiting the lab that day. The Billionaire looked at the data, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the boy worried he might dismiss it as insignificant. But then the Billionaire broke into a rare smile. "This is promising," he admitted. "Keep going." Encouraged by the Billionaire's reaction, the boy doubled down on his efforts. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more challenges, more doubters, and probably more sleepless nights. But for the first time in months, he felt a flicker of hope, not just for himself, but for the man whose life depended on his success. Meanwhile, the Billionaire found himself growing curious about the boy. Who was he really? What drove him to take on such a monumental task? One evening, as they sat together in the lab, the Billionaire decided to ask, "Why are you doing this?" He said, "You could have walked away after that gala. Why stick around?" The boy hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "My sister," he said softly. "She's sick like you. I've seen what this disease does to someone. It takes away their strength, their independence, their joy. I don't want her to live like that anymore. And if I can help you along the way, maybe my work will matter even more." The Billionaire nodded slowly, processing the boy's words. In that moment, he realized something important. This wasn't just about money or fame for the boy. It was personal. That realization changed everything. From that day forward, he stopped seeing the boy as just another researcher in his lab. Instead, he saw him as a partner, a person driven by love and purpose. Much like himself when he was younger. As the weeks went by, the atmosphere in the lab shifted subtly. The other scientists, though still skeptical, began to take notice of the boy's dedication. They saw how hard he worked, how he refused to give up no matter how many times things went wrong. Slowly, they started offering their help, sharing insights and advice that pushed the project forward even faster. By the end of the second month, the boy had developed a prototype treatment. It wasn't ready for human trials yet, but the initial results were promising. For the first time in years, the Billionaire allowed himself to feel a spark of optimism. Maybe, just maybe, this boy really could pull off the impossible. And so, the stage was set for the next chapter of their journey, a chapter filled with uncertainty, courage, and the unwavering belief that sometimes the most extraordinary solutions come from the most unexpected places. By the third month, the boy had reached a critical stage in his work. The prototype treatment he'd developed was ready for testing, but not on humans yet. First, it needed to prove itself in controlled environments using lab samples provided by the Billionaire's team of doctors. These samples were carefully prepared to mimic the disease as closely as possible, giving the boy a chance to see if his nanoparticles could really do what he claimed. The day of the first major test arrived, and the tension in the lab was palpable. Everyone gathered around, even the skeptical scientists who had doubted him from the start. Some came out of curiosity, others because they didn't want to miss seeing the kid fail. But deep down, there was a tiny flicker of hope in the room, even among the doubters. After all, If this worked, it wouldn't just change one life. It could revolutionize medicine forever. The boy stood at the center of the lab, calm but focused. He loaded the nanoparticles into a specialized machine designed to simulate how they would behave inside the human body. Then, with everyone watching intently, he injected them into the sample containing disease cells. For the next hour, the room was eerily quiet except for the hum of equipment and the occasional scribble of notes. The boy monitored the process closely, adjusting settings and making calculations on his laptop. Finally, the results came in. When the data appeared on the screen, the boy's heart skipped a beat. The nanoparticles had done exactly what he'd hoped. They identified the harmful cells, attached themselves to them, and began repairing the damage without harming any healthy tissue nearby. It wasn't perfect, but it was a massive step forward. The billionaire, who had been pacing nervously in the corner, stepped closer to get a better look. His face lit up when he saw the numbers. This is incredible," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. Even the skeptics couldn't hide their amazement. One of the senior scientists muttered under his breath, "I'll be damned." But while the initial results were promising, there was still a long way to go before the treatment could be tested on humans. The boy knew that proving his theory in a lab setting was only half the battle. Convincing people to trust him enough to try it on a real person, especially someone as high profile as the billionaire, was going to be much harder. When the boy presented his findings to the full team, the reactions were mixed. Some were cautiously optimistic, praising his ingenuity and hard work. Others, however, remained wary. "This is impressive," one scientist said, "but we're talking about injecting these particles into a living, breathing human being. Do we really understand all the risks?" Another chimed in, "What if something goes wrong? We could make things worse instead of better." The billionaire listened to their concerns, nodding thoughtfully. He knew they had valid points. This wasn't just about science, it was about ethics, safety, and responsibility. Still, he couldn't ignore the fact that this might be his last chance. Every day, his condition worsened. If he waited too long, he might not survive to see another breakthrough. That night, after everyone else had left the lab, the billionaire sat alone with the boy. They talked for hours, discussing the potential risks and rewards of moving forward. The boy admitted that he wasn't entirely sure what would happen during human trials. There were always unknowns in medicine, no matter how thorough the research. But he also reminded the billionaire of something important. We won't know unless we try. And right now, this is your best shot. It was a gamble, a huge one. But the billionaire decided to take it. Against the advice of nearly everyone in the room, he volunteered to be the first human test subject. "If this works," he told the boy, "you'll have saved my life. If it doesn't, well, I'm already running out of time anyway." Preparations for the trial began immediately. The boy spent countless hours refining the treatment, ensuring that it was as safe and effective as possible. He consulted with experts, ran additional simulations, and double-checked every calculation. Meanwhile, the billionaire underwent a series of medical evaluations to ensure he was physically strong enough to handle the procedure. Despite his declining health, he insisted on staying involved, asking questions and offering input whenever he could. On the morning of the trial, the atmosphere in the lab was electric. Doctors, nurses, and researchers bustled around, preparing equipment and reviewing protocols. The boy stayed by the billionaire's side, explaining each step of the process in detail. "You'll feel a slight pinch when we inject the nanoparticles," he said, trying to sound reassuring. "After that, we'll monitor you closely for any changes." The billionaire nodded, though he looked pale and tense. He trusted the boy, but that didn't mean he wasn't scared. What if something went wrong? What if the nanoparticles cause more harm than good? These thoughts raced through his mind. As he lay down on the hospital bed, surrounded by machines and monitors as the needle pierced his skin and the nanoparticles entered his bloodstream, the room fell silent. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see what would happen. For the first few minutes, nothing seemed different. Then, slowly, the billionaire began to feel a strange warmth spreading through his body. It wasn't painful, just unusual-like. A gentle tingling sensation. Over the next few hours, the team kept a close watch on his vitals. At first, there were some side effects: fatigue, mild fever, and occasional dizziness. These were expected, given the complexity of the treatment. But they still worried everyone. The boy barely left the billionaire's side, constantly checking readings and adjusting medications to manage the symptoms. Days turned into weeks, and gradually, something remarkable happened. The billionaire's condition started improving. His energy levels increased, his pain subsided, and tests showed significant progress in repairing the damaged cells. It wasn't a complete cure, not yet, but it was undeniable proof that the nanoparticles were working. The news spread quickly. Throughout the lab, scientists who had once dismissed the boy's ideas now approached him with newfound respect. One of them even apologized for doubting him. "I underestimated you," the man admitted. "You've done something extraordinary here." But the boy didn't let the praise go to his head. He knew there was still work to be done. While the treatment had shown incredible promise, it needed further refinement before it could be used on a larger scale. And then there was his sister, the reason he'd started this journey in the first place. He couldn't wait to share the good news with her, knowing that this breakthrough could eventually help her too. For the billionaire, the transformation was profound. Not only was his body healing, but his outlook on life changed as well. For so long, he'd been consumed by bitterness and despair, convinced that his illness had stripped him of everything that mattered. Now, thanks to the boy's determination and brilliance, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. One evening, as they sat together in the lab, the billionaire turned to the boy and said, "You've given me more than just a chance to live. You've reminded me what it means to fight for something bigger than myself." The boy smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He hadn't set out to change anyone's life, he'd simply wanted to help. But in doing so, he'd sparked a chain reaction that would touch countless lives in the years to come. And so, as the third phase of their journey came to an end, both the billionaire and the boy knew they were standing on the brink of something extraordinary. Their partnership had defied expectations, silenced critics, and opened doors to possibilities no one had dared to imagine. But the road ahead was far from over. With each new discovery, they moved closer to turning a dream into reality, a dream that had the power to heal not just one man, but the world. The weeks following the billionaire's treatment were a roller coaster of emotions for him, for the boy, and for everyone involved in the project. At first, there was cautious optimism. The initial results were promising. His symptoms had lessened. His energy levels improved, and medical scans showed significant progress in repairing the damaged cells. But no one dared to celebrate too soon. This wasn't just a scientific experiment. It was a life on the line. Every small improvement brought hope, but every minor setback sent waves of worry through the team. For the billionaire, the experience was surreal. He'd spent years feeling like his body was betraying him, robbing him of the strength and vitality he once took for granted. Now, for the first time in ages, he felt a flicker of control returning. Simple things like walking across the room without needing help or staying awake past noon felt monumental. These tiny victories reminded him of how much he'd missed during his illness. They also made him realize how fragile life truly was, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. The nanoparticles weren't perfect. There were days when the side effects hit hard: fatigue, headaches, moments of dizziness that left him frustrated. Some scientists whispered among themselves, wondering if the treatment might be doing more harm than good. What if this is temporary? One asked. What if his body rejects the nanoparticles entirely? Another chimed in, we need to prepare for the worst-case scenario. The boy heard these conversations, and they weighed heavily on him. He knew the risks better than anyone. Science wasn't magic. It couldn't guarantee success every time. But he refused to let doubt creep in. Instead, he doubled down on his efforts, analyzing every piece of data, tweaking the formula, and consulting with experts around the world. His determination became infectious. Slowly but surely, even the skeptics started to rally behind him, inspired by his relentless drive. One evening, after a particularly grueling day in the lab, the billionaire found the boy sitting alone at his workstation. His face was pale, dark circles underlining his eyes. It was clear he hadn't slept properly in days. The billionaire approached quietly and placed a hand on his shoulder. You're pushing yourself too hard, he said gently. Take a break. You've earned it. The boy looked up, surprised. I can't, he replied. Not yet. There's still so much to do. I won't stop until we get this right, not just for you, but for everyone who needs this. The billionaire nodded, understanding the weight of what the boy carried. This wasn't just about curing one person anymore. It was about proving that this technology could work, that it could change lives. And deep down, the billionaire knew why the boy cared so much. Earlier, he'd overheard snippets of phone calls the boy made late at night to someone he called Sis. From those conversations, it was obvious that the boy's younger sister was battling a similar condition. She was the real reason behind his tireless dedication. That realization struck a chord with the billionaire. For years, he'd been consumed by his own struggles, focusing only on himself. But seeing the boy pour his heart into this project, not for fame or fortune, but out of love for his family, made him reflect on his own priorities. Maybe, just maybe, surviving this ordeal wasn't just about getting his health back. Maybe it was about rediscovering what truly mattered. As the weeks turned into months, the treatment continued to show steady progress. The billionaire's recovery wasn't instantaneous, but it was undeniable. Tests confirmed that the nanoparticles were working exactly as intended, targeting and repairing the disease cells while leaving healthy tissue untouched. Word of the breakthrough began to spread beyond the confines of the lab. News outlets caught wind of the story, and soon enough, reporters were calling, eager to learn more about the mysterious boy who had seemingly achieved the impossible. First, the attention overwhelmed the boy. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight. Growing up, he'd always been the quiet kid in class, the one who preferred tinkering with gadgets over playing sports or going to parties. Fame was never part of his plan. But the billionaire stepped in, shielding him from the chaos. Let me handle the media, he said. You focus on the science. That's where your genius lies. With the billionaire managing the publicity, the boy was free to continue refining the treatment. Together, they worked tirelessly, fine-tuning the formula and preparing for the next phase, clinical trials. If successful, this would pave the way for widespread use of the technology, potentially helping millions of people suffering from similar conditions. When the official announcement finally came, it was met with awe and disbelief. Experts hailed the discovery as a game-changer in modern medicine. Critics who had once dismissed the idea as science fiction now scrambled to understand how it worked. Meanwhile, patients and their families flooded the lab with messages of gratitude, sharing stories of loved ones who might benefit from the treatment. Through it all, the boy remained humble. When reporters asked him how he managed to achieve something so extraordinary, he simply smiled and said, It wasn't just me. It took a lot of people believing in this idea even when it seemed impossible. The billionaire watched proudly as the boy handled the attention with grace. He saw glimpses of his younger self in the boy's ambition and resilience. Back then, he too had dared to dream big, undeterred by obstacles. Somewhere along the way, he'd lost sight of that fire. But now, thanks to the boy, it was reignited. One day, after a particularly long interview session, the billionaire pulled the boy aside. "You've changed my life," he said sincerely. "Not just because of the treatment, but because you reminded me what it means to believe in something greater than myself." The boy hesitated, unsure how to respond. Finally, he said, "I didn't do this alone. You trusted me when no one else did. Without your support, none of this would have been possible." Their bond had grown stronger over the months, forged through shared struggles and mutual respect. What started as an unlikely partnership had blossomed into a genuine friendship, one built on trust, determination, and a shared vision for the future. As plans for the clinical trials moved forward, the billionaire kept his promise. True to his word, he handed the boy a check for $1 million. But to everyone's surprise, the boy refused to cash it. Instead, he asked the billionaire to invest the money into funding further research. "This isn't about me," he explained. "If we really want to make a difference, we need to keep going. There are so many others who need help." Moved by the boy's selflessness, the billionaire agreed. Together, they founded a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing nanomedicine. Their mission was simple: to harness the power of technology to heal the human body and improve lives. Worldwide, the organization quickly gained traction, attracting top scientists, generous donors, and passionate advocates. For the boy, this marked the beginning of a new chapter. His work was far from over, but he finally felt like he was making a real impact, not just for his sister, but for countless others like her. And for the billionaire, the journey had transformed him in ways he never expected. He went from being a man defined by his wealth and achievements to someone driven by purpose and compassion. Looking back, neither of them could have predicted how their lives would intersect or how profoundly they would change each other. What started as a desperate plea at a charity gala had evolved into a partnership that defied odds, broke barriers, and inspired hope. And though challenges lay ahead, they faced them together, united by a shared belief in the power of perseverance and the boundless potential of human ingenuity. As the final preparations for the clinical trials began, both the billionaire and the boy knew they were standing on the brink of something extraordinary. Their story was proof that sometimes the most unlikely combinations, a dying billionaire and a determined teenager, could spark revolutions. But more importantly, it was a testament to the fact that true greatness lies not in individual triumphs, but in the courage to believe in the impossible and the willingness to fight for a better tomorrow. Years passed, and the world was never quite the same after that fateful partnership between the billionaire and the boy. What had started as a desperate gamble turned into one of the most significant medical breakthroughs in history. The nanoparticles they developed didn't just save lives, they changed the way people thought about medicine, innovation, and human potential. The nonprofit organization they founded became a beacon of hope for millions around the globe. Scientists from every corner of the earth joined forces to refine the technology, expanding its applications beyond autoimmune diseases to tackle cancer, genetic disorders, and even aging itself. Clinical trials showed remarkable success rates, and soon enough, hospitals began adopting the treatment. Patients who had once been told there was no cure suddenly found themselves getting a second chance at life. For the boy, this was more than just professional success, it was personal vindication. His younger sister, who had inspired so much of his work, was among the first to receive the treatment. Watching her regain her strength and vitality filled him with a joy he couldn't put into words. For years he'd carried the weight of her suffering on his shoulders, feeling helpless as she battled her illness. Now seeing her laugh, dance, and live without pain made all the late nights, doubts, and sacrifices worth it. But the boy didn't stop there. Even as accolades poured in, awards, honorary degrees, interviews, he stayed grounded. Fame wasn't what drove him. Impact was. He traveled to remote villages, underserved communities, and war-torn regions, ensuring that the treatment reached those who needed it most. He believed deeply that cutting-edge science shouldn't be limited to the wealthy or privileged. If we can heal one person, he often said during speeches, why not aim to heal everyone? The billionaire, too, underwent a transformation not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Before meeting the boy, he was a man consumed by bitterness, anger, and fear. Illness had stripped away his identity, leaving him hollow and disconnected from the world. But working alongside someone so young yet so wise taught him lessons he hadn't expected. He learned to appreciate the beauty of resilience, the power of trust, and the importance of giving back. In the years following his recovery, the billionaire shifted his focus entirely. Gone were the days of ruthless corporate deals and relentless pursuit of profit. Instead, he dedicated his time and resources to philanthropy. He funded scholarships for aspiring scientists, built research facilities in developing countries, and supported grassroots initiatives aimed at improving healthcare access. People who had once viewed him as cold and calculating now saw him as compassionate and visionary. Their friendship remained a cornerstone of their lives. Though they came from vastly different worlds, one born into wealth and privilege, the other raised in modest circumstances, they shared an unshakable bond forged through adversity and triumph. They often joked about how unlikely their partnership had been. A dying billionaire and a teenage genius walking into a lab together sounded like the setup to a bad joke. Yet, here they were, proving that miracles could happen when people dared to believe in each other. One day, several years after the initial breakthrough, the nonprofit hosted a grand event to celebrate the opening of a state-of-the-art research facility. It was a sprawling complex equipped with the latest technology, designed to push the boundaries of nanomedicine even further. Scientists, politicians, celebrities, and patients gathered under one roof to mark the occasion. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement and gratitude. As part of the ceremony, the billionaire took the stage to deliver a speech. Dressed in a sharp suit, he looked healthier and happier than anyone had seen him in decades. His voice carried both authority and warmth as he addressed the crowd. When I stood at that charity gala years ago, he began, I never imagined my life would take such an extraordinary turn. I was angry, scared, and convinced I had nothing left to offer the world. Then, a young boy walked up to me and said 4 simple words, prepare the check. At the time, I thought he was either crazy or incredibly brave. Turns out he was both. The audience erupted into laughter, but the billionaire's tone grew serious as he continued. That boy didn't just give me a new lease on life. He reminded me what it means to truly live. He showed me that brilliance has no age limit, that compassion knows no bounds, and that sometimes the greatest discoveries come from the most unexpected places. He paused, looking out at the sea of faces before turning to the boy who sat in the front row. You didn't just save my life, you saved countless others. And you did it not for fame or fortune, but because you cared. That's a legacy worth celebrating. When the boy stepped onto the stage to join him, the applause was deafening. Unlike the billionaire, he didn't prepare a formal speech. Instead, he spoke from the heart, his voice steady but filled with emotion. This isn't about me, he said. It's about all of us. Every scientist who worked tirelessly in the lab, every patient who trusted us with their lives, every donor who believed in our mission. This is proof that when we come together, we can achieve the impossible. His words resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom wiped away tears. Among them were patients whose lives had been transformed by the treatment, people who had once felt invisible, forgotten, or hopeless. Now they stood tall, grateful not just for the science but for the humanity behind it. After the ceremony, the boy and the billionaire stood side by side, watching as guests explored the new facility. Children ran through the halls, laughing and marveling at interactive exhibits showcasing the wonders of nanotechnology. Researchers exchanged ideas, their eyes lighting up with possibilities. In that moment, they knew their work wasn't done, it might never be. But they also knew they had laid the foundation for something enduring. Do you ever wonder what's next? The billionaire asked, breaking the silence. The boy smiled. Every day. There's still so much we don't know, so many problems waiting to be solved. But if we approach them with the same determination and teamwork that got us here, I think we'll be okay. The billionaire nodded, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Together, they walked back inside, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Their journey had taught them that true greatness wasn't about individual achievements, it was about creating ripples of change that touched lives far beyond their own. And so, their story became more than just a tale of science and survival. It was a reminder that courage, compassion, and collaboration could overcome even the darkest odds. It was proof that two strangers, brought together by fate, could spark a revolution. Most importantly, it was a testament to the boundless potential of the human spirit, a spirit capable of dreaming big, taking risks, and changing the world one tiny particle at a time.